Could Quinshon Judkins to Ohio State end up a college football trade?
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi, I'm Stephen Willis, a former staff member at Ole Miss and a 10-year veteran member of the national media at Yahoo Sports. Today on the show, we talk about Dallan Hayden from Ohio State and wonder if Lane Kiffin is about to do the running back room this year, what he did to the quarterback room with Spencer Sanders a year ago. We look at this weird Grove Bowl games format and try to figure out how the stakeholders of the program will get anything out of it. And Ole Miss got a commitment from Talib Graham, a 3-star that really showed out at the Under Armour Atlanta camp this year. This is the Locked On Ole Miss podcast, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. We're free and available on all the podcast apps and on YouTube. Thanks for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen every day, and a special hello to the everydayers who make the show what it is. Special thanks go out to the Grove Collective for making the Juice Wells interview happen. More is likely to come over the next few weeks. Go to thegrovecollective.com and join today. Really interesting thing that today I was going to do. Basically, what was going to be the second segment of the show was going to be the lead in this show. And then it came out that on 3 and Matt Zenitz and all them talking about Dallan Hayden entering the transfer portal from Ohio State. And you might not know a whole lot about this kid, but Dallan Hayden is a running back. He's the son of Aaron Hayden, who played ball at Tennessee a couple of years ago. But you're seeing it on subscription sites at Ole Miss. This is from Inside the Rebel. Has a potential running back portal candidate emerged at running back for Ole Miss. And, you know, the actual tweet whenever they announced it, Ohio State running back Dallan Hayden has informed the Buckeyes staff that he plans to enter the transfer portal when the spring portal window opens. Hayden, a former 4-star recruit and the son of Tennessee and NFL running back Aaron Hayden, ran for 553 yards as a freshman in 2022. He's from Christian Brothers High School in Memphis. That's the reason you're hearing a lot of smoke around Ole Miss, just because it would make sense to come home. Chase Hayden, a former running back that went to Arkansas and eventually ended up at Illinois, was his brother as well. Dallan Hayden has a chance to be a special type running back if he gets into the right system. I think he is a system fit type of back. And I think he would fit a role at Ole Miss very well. Now let's look at the Ole Miss running back room, where you have a leading of Ulysses Bentley IV. Now, we always talk about how explosive and how good Ulysses Bentley IV could be, but we also mentioned that 90 to 100 carries a year appears to be his maximum, and he has shown a tendency in the Ole Miss uniforms to be injury prone. So Ole Miss obviously needed to go get somebody else. They went and recruited Logan Diggs, who had an ACL tear in his bowl game on January 1st. He is going to come back probably at the earliest in time for a playoff run, but I would not count on him before then. Kedrick Reescano, really good running back, completely unproven. So anybody that is worried about how this transfer portal window could affect Kedrick, don't, because it's a situation where this program, competition is everything. That is rule number one. This comes from those Pete Carroll rules that were set up. And I literally worked on a Pete Carroll disciple staff. So I understand the role that competition has on this football team. Now, in the age of the transfer portal, it might be hidden competition to where it doesn't publicly get out there, but the competition is still there. And if you want to see that one way or another, look at the quarterback room a year ago when Spencer Sanders came in to push Jackson Dart. Jackson Dart answered the bell, and the rest is history. I think the same type thing could be happening in the running back room going into 2024. Now, I think Henry Parrish is still a thing. I think he's still on the board, and this might just be a second type running back if Ole Miss decides to go this route. Or, you know, if Dallan Hayden decides to go somewhere else. I don't think this is in any way a done deal other than the proximity of knowing where he's from and getting into the transfer portal. Now, it's interesting that Aaron Hayden's son is not going to be recruited by Tennessee. That's kind of a weird situation to think of as well. But this running back room with Ulysses Bentley IV and Kedrick Reescano, because I do think Kedrick Reescano has a chance to be a really good back. This is going to be a show me type of year. If he comes on in the beginning of the year and kind of keeps his progression to the end of the season, Kedrick Reescano is going to be the dude moving forward on this football team. And then you'll have a healthy Logan Diggs next year, and you're looking for that third back in a Kylan Deere. So that's kind of the 3 for next year, potentially. What about this year, though? You got a true freshman year. So he's coming in as a year 3 type player. So you're not a long-term transfer if Dallan Hayden decides to go to Ole Miss. He ran for a little bit over 500 yards as a true freshman at Ohio State. Talented running back. Henry Parrish is a true senior. It would be a graduate transfer, although I don't even know if that matters now that you can transfer every single year. But the running back room at Ole Miss has a chance with that to get not crowded. I don't want to say that, but beneficial to Jackson Dart and the Ole Miss offense, because many different weapons can be used in and the carries are going to go down. We always talk all the time that the running back room is going to look like it did in 2020 and 2021. I think if this were to happen, it would be that on steroids. And you would have a situation where you have 3 running backs with 90 carries, 1 running back with about 45 or 50 carries, and that is your running game. In 1985, that might have been 1 back that had 370 carries or something like that. Now it's going to be spread out over 4 guys, and you have the depth to make it happen. Now, the question becomes, if that happens, if that is the direction that Lane Kiffin wants to go, what does that exactly look like? A, we'd be dealing in potentially the first college football trade that has ever happened, with Quinshon Judkins going up there and Dallan Hayden coming down here. But we'll have to keep an eye on this. I think all the subscription service, like David Johnson from Inside the Rebels, said, hey, this is just something to keep an eye on. Not necessarily anything that is imminent. The transfer portal is open, heck, a week from yesterday. The transfer portal opens up. So it's going to get wild. It's going to get crazy. We'll see exactly how it goes. But Dallan Hayden potentially entering the portal, coming back, a Memphis kid coming back down south. Now, it might be a situation that Hayden's going to Memphis. Maybe Ryan Silverfield has put something together where Hayden comes back to his hometown, because Memphis is supposed to be a contender for that G5 playoff berth this year. So we'll see exactly how that looks. I'm going to keep an eye on it. There's always the chance that Lane Kiffin wants to keep the running back room, honestly, like he did a year ago with the quarterback room, and let competition sort everything out. And so I'm going to be paying attention to that as well. Should be pretty interesting stuff. Thanks again for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen of the day. We talk about how the stakeholders of Ole Miss football can make this weird Grow Bowl games format worthwhile right after this. It's playoff time in the NBA and NHL. Baseball's in full swing, and FanDuel is your place to bet every single game. Right now, with new customers, can get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150 win or lose. One of the things you can bet on is Ole Miss and their odds to make the 2024 college football playoff. Currently, a yes payout is minus 122, which is about 54% probability of it happening. I thought that was kind of interesting stuff, but that is not all. You can bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks on this app that is safe, secure, and easy to use. What are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet an automatic win. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down all the volume with all of that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today. It's a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every single day to bring you the biggest stories without all of that screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. So Ole Miss is going to do what they're calling the Grove Bowl games. And as soon as that was announced, what was it, last Friday, last Saturday, I forget the date and the timing exactly, I immediately started thinking about what needed to happen to make that worthwhile to stakeholders. And I do want to look out for the stakeholders above everything else, because in this era where the fans are paying the salaries of these players, you cannot hide them. They deserve to see exactly what they have. And yes, I understand about the transfer portal and injuries and all of that stuff. I get that. But if you're going to ask people for money, you at least need to let them play football in front of those people so they can see what they're paying for. Now, I also understand that the regular season come this fall is going to be important. I get that. But it is a situation to where whenever Ole Miss is going to come out probably without pads, play basically touch football and have elementary school field day, what is that going to be worthwhile for fans? So I started thinking about that recently. I think the number one thing that fans need to pay attention to is Trey Harris versus Trey Amos. It's a situation to where they've made basically news the entire spring, doing their one-on-ones against each other. Their battles have been pretty epic. I've talked to Juice Wells. I've talked to Daquan Wright this spring, where they talked about how that was important and must-see TV for their teammates. Everybody's watching a rep that Trey Harris and Trey Amos is going at it. I think it's number 9 versus number 9. Everybody was interested on that. Trey Harris is a number 1 ranked press coverage graded player from PFF coming into it. And Trey Amos is one of the best lockdown man-to-man corners on Ole Miss's football team, maybe even in the Southeastern Conference. So this in a 7-on-7 background where you don't have to worry about rush and things like that, I think that's going to be important to see. And you'll see a 7-on-7 look of Austin Simmons. You'll see that with Walker Howard, and you'll see it with Jackson Dart, them out there on the field throwing that around. So this matchup is probably the must-see primary attraction of the Grove Bowl games this season. If you do not get to see this matchup, it is a failure on, I guess, Lane Kiffin's part, on the staff's part, everything in the setup of it. This is probably the primary thing and the most important thing that you want to see. Trey Amos and Trey Harris battling it out. Those are going to be the main things. Now, if you look at other things that are happening, we saw pictures over the last couple of days on social media of Jackson Dart wearing a black jersey. Diego Pounds wearing a black jersey. There appears to be a lot of black jerseys going on this spring in Ole Miss football. So maybe this would be an opportunity to be able to see somebody like Austin Simmons. Austin Simmons is the left-handed quarterback that is a dual sport star out of South Florida. He's made waves during his football practices, and he has not missed a football practice, to my knowledge, all spring. He's missed some baseball games. He did not travel to Arkansas because Ole Miss was practicing on Saturday. So anybody that is worried about baseball distracting away from Austin Simmons' quarterback role, don't. Everything's going on there. Now, I do worry just personally, these Grove Bowl games set up. This was supposed to be a, lack of a better word, coming out party for Austin Simmons to the Ole Miss fan base. This is supposed to be the first time that Ole Miss fans got to see this quarterback. somebody that I have described multiple times as Tua with 3 inches, and somebody that just throws a beautiful, beautiful football. Situation to where I call this a cold war between Austin Simmons and Walker Howard, getting ready for the quarterback competition that is kind of simmering now, but is really going to take off a year from now. It's going to be everything. It's going to be everything you need to put your eyes on, that quarterback competition. Well, this spring practice, nobody got to see it. This spring, nobody got to see what Austin Simmons actually looked like. When I mean nobody, I mean the stakeholders, the people that are essentially paying Austin's salary. You know, whenever you're talking about what's going on with the Grove Collective and all that, the people that donate and are members of that collective, they're getting left out right now in what's going on in the spring practice. It's one of the reasons that I am not a huge fan of the Grove Bowl games, is because if you're going to want to get people to contribute to your program, going out and having an elementary school field day is probably not the way to do it. Why Ole Miss, in my opinion, I have no idea why, but why not make it a $10 entry fee into the spring game, do a scrimmage, heck, don't televise it if you're worried about it going out, and charge $10 for admission to get in and see that, and you can clear $100,000, $200,000 pretty easily. Especially in a year when all of the anticipation would be completely on the table. It's interesting. I think it will be fine the way it is potentially. And like I said, you have the Trey Harris and Trey Amos stuff. You're going to get to see Austin Simmons throw the ball on air. You're going to get to see Walker Howard a little bit and see how he processes. You're not going to be able to have a lot of takeaways post-game from it. And I think that's the design, honestly. That's what they're trying to do. And I think that is detrimental to the fan base, in my opinion. Whenever you have a situation to where you are counting on this fan base to basically bankroll what's going on. And remember, Mississippi is 50th in the nation in income. It's poor. But yet your collective is running efficiently and is doing everything that you need to happen. I worry at times that the shut up and give attitude will happen. I'm not saying it's happening now, but stuff like this is letting you know that they don't necessarily care about the stakeholders potentially. That's a warning shot a little bit. And even going into a spring game, every other college is having spring games this year. Every other single one. And there's ways to do this to make it to where the film is absolutely useless. If you look at what Lane Kiffin did a year ago, to where the defense was only allowed to call 2 plays, and the offense just going up and down the field on it, yeah, that's one way. The year before, all the wide receiver jerseys were wearing no contact jerseys, which again made the film useless. It was a way that you could say thank you to the fans, who is extremely, extremely invested in what you're going to do this season. I get the fact of why you're doing what you're doing. That's not the point. I'm saying it's the wrong decision because of these stakeholders with the Grove Collective and things like that. I think people that donate hard-earned money into paying essentially these players' salaries, I think that they deserve a little bit more. And the Grove Bowl games in the NFL, the Pro Bowl games work because everybody has a vested interest in their favorite player, Lamar Jackson or somebody like that on the field. You go to see them. In college football, those don't exist anymore. So I think this is a weird situation. I think there's a way that we can get some stuff out of it. So don't get me wrong. I think Trey Harris versus Trey Amos is going to be must-see television. But otherwise, I don't know if it's a spectator type event. And the spring game at the end of the day, and it's always been this way. It's always been a thank you to the fans. Always. And over the last several years, the fans have taken one shot after another. And now with them having more responsibility in the program than they ever have, I don't know if this was a good idea. If they were going to go in and run 50 inside zone plays and 3 simple pass plays, I think that would be better off than something like this. You are probably more likely to get injured, by the way, in a 7-on-7 game because of all the wiggle. It's probably more dangerous for a skill type player because they're going side to side and twisting to avoid flags getting pulled. So injury, I don't know if that's the fact. And we're, 5 months or something away from the first game. I think it's a little bit of an excuse. But we'll see exactly how it goes. Like I said, I'm looking forward. I have Brad Logan coming on after the game for our postcast whenever we live stream. I've got David Eckert on Thursday. I've got Michael Katz on Tuesday, and I've got John Macon Gillespie on Monday. So we're going to have a ton of perspectives about this spring practice and the Grove Bowl moving forward as well. Like I said, it's not necessarily that I don't understand what's going on. I just don't know if I absolutely agree with the premise of it happening, because at the end of the day, it always seems to happen. The people that end up seeing it less and getting less football are the fans, and in this case, the stakeholders. And I think somebody needs to look out for them because, Lane Kiffin, he's only caring about how he can make his team better, and he should. He makes $9 million a year. But at the end of the day, who is watching out for the fans? Who is watching out and doing that? That is my concern. Like I said, this Grove Bowl thing, the Grove Bowl games could absolutely work. It could be fine. And at the end of the day, hey, that's a really cool thing. But taking football away from the fans that are supporting this football team, that are paying the whole salaries and all of that, I don't know if that is a good idea at this particular juncture. So we'll see exactly how it goes for Ole Miss this spring. Still more to come on Locked On Ole Miss, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. The transfer portal might be a week away, but recruiting keeps going, and Ole Miss got a defensive line commitment. Stick around. Thanks for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen of the day, and shout out to the everydayers. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on the Amazon Fire TV in the free Fire TV Channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows that cover every single league. Find Locked On Sports Today, now available in the free Fire TV Channels app. Be part of history. Let's change gears a little bit and talk a little bit about Talib Graham, defensive lineman out of Daphne, Alabama. Now, we'll put it on right here, and look at what the film says, the video says. Let's look at the highlights real quick. The first thing you notice is this is a super athletic. This is an extremely athletic player. He's being recruited to play the jack position, it looks like. He's explosive. He reminds me a lot of DeeJay Holmes. Everybody remember DeeJay Holmes from Pahokee, Florida? Led the nation in sacks. He has that type of explosion and get off coming off the ball. That being said, you are setting up and wanting to develop him for down the road, because whenever you look at high school recruiting has a chance to be some of the more expensive recruiting of all of that, and the transfer portal is a freshman, transfer portal is a sophomore. When you look at the 5 recruitments of a player, the most expensive obviously would be the high school unit, because of you have to negotiate 5 times. But Graham is a really, really explosive player. If you looked at him, he just abused left tackles over the course of his junior season. He's going into a senior year. I think he is going to go up the charts from On3 and all those subscription services that rate high school players. He's a player that went to the Under Armour camp in Atlanta and showed out pretty well. And he's somebody that has a chance to really, really grow. And when you look at the defensive line that is already entrenched at Ole Miss, as far as, underclassmen, you have Jeffrey Rush, you have William Eccles, you have Cam Beavers, those guys at the defensive line, Kamarion Franklin. This is the player that Jamonte Waller was supposed to be. Ole Miss missed out on Jamonte Waller a year ago. This is the player that Jamonte Waller was supposed to be on that defensive line. Whenever you looked at a class and said, hey, this class has absolutely everything I need to make our future defensive line at Ole Miss, this is the player that can do a lot of the same stuff that Jamonte Waller can do. So we'll see exactly how he goes. Now, also, Dillon Alford is scheduled to be on campus over, I think, Monday and Tuesday. Today, he's still on campus, I believe. And that's an important thing. He's a wide receiver. Wide receivers that visit Ole Miss, that's an important type deal. He's a player that pretty consistently, honestly, gets a shout out from Mike Espy and Shay Hodge, the people from the academy, the training place down in Jackson. So he's a really good player. He's transferred from somewhere on the coast to Saraland High School outside of Mobile or in Mobile. Don't know the exact location of that. Really, really good football player. One more little piece of information. I think DJ Mann, a high school coach, has been recruited as, I don't know if recruited is the right word, hired, I should say, as the assistant player personnel development guy for Ole Miss. He's the guy that has roots in Texas. And I think this is important about which direction Ole Miss is wanting to go. He's a high school guy that has a little bit of influence. I think he was out in West Texas doing a lot of his work, but Ole Miss has hired Billy Glasscock as the general manager from the University of Texas. They've hired the general manager, I think Alex Brown, I think is his name, from SMU, who has experience at Rice. A little bit to going on. You have Randall Joyner, who is a recruiting expert in the Dallas area. You can see that Ole Miss is kind of going all in on Texas, maybe as much as they are on Florida. Now, Charlie Weiss has Florida ties. Kevin Smith has Florida ties. So I think it's important for Ole Miss to be heavy in Florida, heavy in Texas, and it looks like they are trying to do that as well. I'm pretty excited about where this program sits at the moment and what they're doing for the future, because it looks like you can see for the first time in a couple of years building for the future and building for longevity. And you can see how they're recruiting, how they're building their staff. They're kind of making their weak points their strength. And Lane Kiffin deserves all of the credit for that, in my opinion. Anyway, thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen. We have the most perspective surrounding spring practice and Ole Miss football, and it's one of the many reasons we are the number one Ole Miss podcast, and thank you for that. But for your second listen, check out Locked On Sports Today. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows that cover every single league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV Channels app. And for those of you on YouTube, we'll send you there right now. Anyway, hotty toddy, everyone.